Madam, good evening, madam.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Shall we start,
Yeah,
ma'am?
sure, sir.
Okay, madam. Good evening, all. This is Dr. S. Shekhar, founder and managing trustee of Star International Foundation for Research and Education. I welcome you all for the day 2 of 7 days online workshop on research methodology and publication ethics. Now, I would like to introduce few words about today's resource person, Dr. T. Devika Machi, ma'am. She has over 22 years of teaching experience in commerce. She began her career as higher secondary school teacher at SMT Higher Secondary School and later served as a assistant professor at SDNB Vaishnav College for Women, Krompet. Since 2018, she has been an assistant professor at AM Jain College, Meenambakam. She holds an MPhil and PhD in commerce from the University of Madras, specializing in human resource, retail marketing, and income tax. She has published 5 Scopus indexed over 35 papers at national and international conferences and attended more than 40 academic programs. Dr. Kamachi ma'am has guided over 500 BCom corporate secretary students in institutional training projects and has served as an external examiner in multiple institutions. She is a member of the Question Papers Scrutiny Committee and Passing Board at Guru Nanak College and the Academic and Administrative Audit Council at STNB Vaishnav College for Women. She has completed numerous online courses in digital marketing and online teaching methodologies. Recognized for her contribution to academia, she received an Outstanding Faculty Teaching Award from Amravati Research Academy in 2020 and has been invited as a chief guest and a resource person at the academic event. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shekhar, sir, for giving the introduction about me.
Thank you.
And happy evening to all the participants. Hope all are doing good. This is Dr. T. Devi Kamakshi signing on for the 7 days online workshop on research methodology and publication ethics, organized by the Star International Foundation for Research and Education. First, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this workshop. As a mark of day 2 of the workshop, today we are going to see about framing of objectives and hypotheses in research. I humbly request the participants to ask the doubts and questions after the completion of the presentation. Now let's move on to the session. So today's session, we are going to see about framing of objectives and hypotheses. So in research process, actually the framing of objectives and hypothesis plays a crucial role. Okay. Once we have chosen our topic. Okay. So after choosing our topic, we have to move on to framing of objectives and hypothesis. So today's session, we are going to see about this framing of objectives and hypothesis in detail. Overview of the presentation. This presentation will cover the key aspects of framing research objectives and hypothesis. It will begin with an introduction to research, the definition and role of research objectives. Next, the significance of setting clear objectives and their impact on research, characteristics of well-framed objectives. The next, the steps involved in framing the research objectives, different types of research objectives, Then the second part is overviewing or framing of hypothesis, definition of hypothesis, importance of hypothesis, characteristics of hypothesis, types of hypothesis, steps in framing the hypothesis, and last, the conclusion. To start with the introduction of research and objectives. So research is a systematic process of inquiry aimed at generating new knowledge, solving problems, or developing new theories. A crucial step in conducting research is the framing of objectives, which defines the purpose and direction of the study. Objectives provide a clear roadmap, ensuring that the research remains focused and structured. The well-defined objectives guide to the research methodology, data collection, analysis, and interpretation, ultimately contributing to the study's credibility and relevance. So once we have chosen our research topic, the researcher has to frame the objectives. Okay, so it is the center point in which the entire research process is surrounded by. Okay, so once the research objectives are clearly defined, the process of research goes on in a smooth way. The objectives, framing of objectives, gives a roadmap. It provides a roadmap for the entire research process. It helps in It helps the researcher in data collection, analysis, and interpretation. Coming to the definition of research, meaning of research. Research is a systematic process of inquiry aimed at discovering new knowledge, solving problems, and developing new theories. So research is something what we are going to find a new theory. We are going to arrive at a new conclusion. Okay. So that is, it is a systematic process, and it aims at discovering new knowledge and solving problems and developing new ideas or theories. Research can be defined as the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach out new conclusions. So every research. So coming to the meaning and definition of research objectives. Research objectives are specific goals that a study aims to achieve and guide the entire research process. Research objectives can be defined as statements that describe what the research is trying to accomplish, providing a clear direction for data collection, analysis, and interpretation. So that is based on the research objectives only. The researcher has to collect the necessary data for the research process. So the data collected should aim at achieving the research objectives, which is framed by the researcher. Coming to the importance of research objectives, the framing of research objectives is vital for several reasons. So it's narrow down the research scope. So in the following ways, that is, the research objectives ensure that the study remains within a well-defined boundary. It avoids unnecessary expansion of the topic, making the study more manageable. It provides a structured approach to research, preventing excessive generalization. So once the research objectives are framed, okay, so the researcher has to work within that boundary. The data collection, the review of literature, the next process, we are going to see all this. Actually, the review of literature, then the data collection, analysis, all the research process aims to fulfill or to satisfy or to achieve our research objectives. Okay. So once the research objectives are framed, it helps the to work within an unnecessary expansion of the topic. Okay, so the researcher can concentrate on the topic which he has mentioned in his objectives. Okay, so which research process more effectively and efficiently. He can manage the entire process, the research process easily. And it also provides a structured approach to research, preventing excessive generalization. It gives the research objectives, gives a structured approach, a well-structured approach for the researcher to travel in his research path. and reliability. So the research objectives helps the researcher for a prompt evaluation and adjustments. Okay, so it helps the researcher to see the research process step by step in a very sequential manner. Okay, so it enables continuous monitoring and refinement of the research process. And it also helps in identifying the gaps, okay, or the inconsistencies or even the deviations. Okay, so the research objectives helps for proper evaluation in a right, and if the data collected and the process is going on track, it with his research, the researcher finds any deviations. So in that stage, the researcher has to make the necessary. Coming to the next importance of research objectives, research. Realistic objectives help manage resources. Setting achievable research objectives ensures that time, finance, and effectively. It prevents over-ambitious goals that could stretch the available resources. It encourages researchers to work within their limitations while maximizing productivity. So the research objectives also helps the researchers to manage the available resources. So whether it could be of time, money, or human resources. Okay, so all the resources should be effectively utilized. Since the research can, so he can collect the necessary data or information relating only to the objectives framed. Okay, so this would reduce all the resources, that is time, finance, and human. So and can have a maximum effectiveness in his research process. The next importance of framing objectives, research objectives, is it saves time and effort. So a well-framed objectives streamline the research process by eliminating unnecessary steps. It helps in prioritizing tasks, focusing on what is essential, and avoiding redundant activities. It also reduces delays and inefficiencies, ensuring the study is completed within the allocated time frame. So that is the research objectives. It helps the researchers to save the time and efforts. So as we already discussed, that is, since the objectives are framed by the researcher can concentrate on the process, okay, data collection process and other process within that, to have within that boundaries or the limit. Okay, so more than that objectives, he cannot go for in search of the data or the information. So this would automatically reduces or save time, effort, and also all the resources. So these are some of the importance of research objectives. So now we are going to see about the characteristics of research objectives. Effective research objectives should possess the following characteristics. So first one, it should have clear defined goals. That is, the research objectives should be precise and clearly stated what the study aims to achieve. It should avoid vague or overly broad statements that can lead to confusion or misrepresentation. So the first and foremost characteristic or feature of research objective is It should be clearly defined. So the research objective should have a clear goals. The research objectives should be precise and clear. The researcher at the time of framing the objectives, he should have a clear objective. So what the researcher has to do in his research work, the entire process, that has to be clearly defined in the objective stage itself. So it should be precise and it should not be, the objective framed should not lead to any confusion. Okay, it must be clear that the researcher, yes, I'm going in a right way. I'm going in the right path to achieve my research objectives. That clarity all the researchers must have. The second important characteristic of research objective is it addresses a particular aspect of the study. Research objectives should ensure that each objective focuses on a specific element of the research problem. It helps in maintaining a well-structured and manageable research scope. It prevents unnecessary deviations from the primary research question. So that is, a good research objective should have a particular, should concentrate or should focus on a particular aspect of the study. So what are the general objectives? What are the specific objectives the researchers are framing? Okay, so that should be particular. It should focus on each and every element of that research problem. So it helps in maintaining a well-structured and manageable research scope for the researchers, and the research objectives, well-framed research objectives should prevent unnecessary deviations from the primary research questions. So the unnecessary data should not be collected or aligned with the research work. So the data required by the researcher for the research work alone has to be prioritized. Coming to the next characteristic, it allows progress assessment. So the research objectives, measurable objectives provide a way to track research progress. It helps researchers to determine whether the study is going on in the right path. It enables continuous monitoring and comparison against predefined benchmarks. So that is one of the most important characteristic feature of this objectives, research objectives, is it should take the researcher to the right path, in the right direction towards the research process in attaining the research objectives. Okay, and it also helps the researcher to monitor and compare against the predefined benchmarks. Okay, so the data collected, whether the data collected is aligned with the research objectives. Okay, so that has to be monitored at each and every stage in the research process by the researcher. The next one helps determine success. So the research objectives establish clear criteria for evaluating the outcomes. It allows researchers to analyze whether the study meets its intended goals. It provides a basis for making improvements, modifications, or further research recommendations. So a well-framed research objective should help in determining the success. Okay, so whether the researcher is going in the right way, whether he is able to meet his objectives, the goals already framed, whether he is going in a right track to achieve the objectives. And if there is any deviations in the data collected or in the process and with the objectives, so the deviation has to be corrected, and the improvements and modifications has to be made in that stage itself in order to proceed with the further stages. The next characteristic of research objectives is it must be realistic and feasible. Research objectives should be practical and achievable within the given constraints. Unrealistic goals can lead to difficulties in execution and unreliable results. So at the time of framing the objectives, the researcher should be very cautious in framing the objectives. Okay, that is, the objectives framed by the researcher should be practical and achievable. Okay, if it is not, if it is having some unrealistic goals, if the goals is not practical and achievable, then it may lead to various disturbances and distractions in proceeding with the research process. So at the time of framing the objectives, the researcher should keep in mind that the objectives should be practical and achievable. The next characteristics is it should match with available resources. The research objectives, the research should consider available time, budget, manpower, and tools. It ensures that the study can be conducted efficiently without exceeding limitations. So all the resources must be utilized effectively and efficiently, and the resources should match the objectives. The resources what the researcher is having. So it should match or it should pave way for achieving the objectives framed by the researcher. And it should not exceed the limitations also. So the resources should be within, it should be effectively used within the limitations. The next characteristics is it aligns with research goals. Research objectives should be directly related to the main research question. It ensures that the study remains meaningful and contributes to the field. Okay, so that is the researcher should be clear in framing his research objectives. Okay, and it should be directly related to the main research question or the statement of problem. Okay, the research should ensure that the study remains meaningful and contributes in achieving the framed objectives. The next one is addresses practical or theoretical issues. Objectives should focus on solving real-world problems or advancing knowledge. It helps in producing results that are useful for stakeholders or future research. So the objectives framed, it should focus on solving the real-world problems or the issues. Okay, so at the time of choosing the topic itself, the researcher can concentrate on the hot topics or the hot issues prevailing at the time of selecting his topic. Okay, and it should focus on solving the real-world problems. It helps in producing results that are useful for the stakeholders or future research. So after completing the research, okay, the conclusion what the researcher has given in his research, so that should help the stakeholders, necessary stakeholders, or for the future research purpose or the future researchers who are filling the gap in that research. The next characteristics of research objectives is defines a clear timeline. Research objectives should specify a deadline for achieving results. It helps in planning research activities efficiently within a given time frame. Okay, so this is very, very important. So all the research, it should complete. Okay, it should go on in a right direction within the time frame. Okay, so say for example, the each and every stage in research process has some specific time. Okay, starting from the collection of review of literature, then method choosing the data collection, then methodology used, the analysis, interpretation. So each and every stage of the research has a limitation, that is time limitation. It has to be completed within that time frame. Okay, so the objective framed by the researcher should helps the researcher to complete his research process or each and every step within that stipulated time period or the time frame. The next one is, it encourages timely completion. Setting deadlines ensures that research progresses systematically without unnecessary delays. It prevents procrastination and ensures that milestones are met on schedule. Okay, so that is the each and every step or the process in that entire research work. Okay, it has to be systematically completed within the time frame. Okay, there should not be any unnecessary delays, so which may lead to unnecessary wastage of the resources. So if the research objectives are clearly framed, it helps the researcher to complete his work within the stipulated time. The next one, it improves resource management. Allocating time constraints ensures optimal use of available resources. It helps researchers to balance the workload and prevents last-minute rushes. Okay, so that is, once the objectives are framed, okay, it has to be achieved within that time frame. So so accordingly, all the steps has to be taken by the researcher. So for each and every stage, the researcher must fix a time frame for this completion with the available resources. So the researchers has to balance the workload, and it prevents the last minute tension or rushes for the researchers. So next we are going to see the steps in framing research objectives. So we know that research objectives is the crucial part in the research process. So now we are going to see how to frame this research objectives. So before framing this research objectives, the following steps are to be taken into consideration by the researcher. The first step is to identify the research problem. The first step is understanding the central issue or question that the study aims to address. A research problem is the specific issue, gap, or challenge that a study aims to address. It is the foundation of any research project, guiding the entire process from data collection to analysis. Identifying a well-defined research problem ensures that the study remains focused, relevant, and contributes to existing knowledge. So this is important step. This is first and foremost step in framing the research objective, that is identifying the research problem. So what issue or what is the question we are going to take it as a central point for the study. So that should be centered. The research problem, what we are identifying, should be kept as a center point. So around which all the research process is revolving. Okay, so all the research process is based on the problem or the question what we are choosing for our research. So that is the first step in framing the research objectives. So a research problem is should aim, sorry, research problem acts as the foundation for any research work. Okay, so as we construct a building, okay, so the foundation must be given strong. Okay, strong foundation has to be given for any high heights buildings. Okay, so like that. So the entire research process depends on the foundation which is given in identifying the research problem. Okay, so based on that, the required data is collected, analysis is made, and the final conclusion and suggestions are given. So importance of identifying a research problem. The first one, it provides a clear focus. So once we are identifying a research problem, okay, it gives a clear track or focus to the researcher to work on his research process. It guides the entire research process. So identifying a research problem guides the entire research process. Okay, review of literature or data collection and so on. It ensures relevance and contribution. Okay, so this is important. Identifying a research problem ensures relevance and contributions also. So it facilitates objective setting. So it helps in setting the objectives. Okay, so general and specific objectives. It optimizes resource allocation. So the optimal use of resources can be made only if the research problem is properly identified by the researcher. It enhances problem solving and decision making. So it helps the researcher in solving various problems which he come across in his research work or research process and arriving at a proper decision. It improves the research validity and credibility also. Okay? So once the research problem is clearly identified, it helps the research to have a maximum validity or to get maximum validity and credibility. The next step in framing research objective is to conduct a literature review. So this is very important step, conducting a literature review. A literature review is a comprehensive summary and analysis of existing research on a specific topic. It helps the researchers understand the current state of knowledge, identify gaps, and establish a theoretical foundation for their study. Conducting a literature review ensures that new research builds on previous work rather than duplicating the existing studies. So literature review, actually it is very, very important step in framing the objectives. Okay, so once we are selecting, we are choosing our research topic. So based on that topic, so we have to do the prelim work, that is literature review. We have to study on the previous studies. Okay, so what are the studies have been made relating to our topic. Okay, so only making a full review of that literature relating to that topic, we can come to a proper idea, and even the objectives can be clearly framed based on the literature review, past studies. Okay, so what are the tools they have used? What is the research gap? Okay, so what are the methodology they have implemented? So based on that, it helps the researcher to move on to the next stage of the research process in a correct direction, right direction. So now let us see the importance of literature review. It helps in understanding the research landscape. So the literature review helps to understand the research fully. Okay, so that is the entire area of the research based on our topic what we have chosen. It identifies gaps and opportunities for the new research. So by having a complete literature review, the researcher could be able to identify the gap. Okay, so identify the gaps, and it also paves way for the new research, opportunity for new research. So identifying the gaps, okay, and paying what his research has to contribute to the society. Okay, so that can be arrived only after proper literature review. The next one is it prevents duplication of previous studies. So literature review, we are studying the past studies. Okay, so we are not producing the same in our research, but we are having the past studies as a base foundation. Okay, and based on that foundation, we are going to give a new conclusion and new theories to our research. So it prevents duplication. The next one, it supports the formulation of a strong research framework, and it helps in the strong framework, research objective framework. It provides a basis for developing hypotheses and research questions. Okay, so the research literature review helps to develop a hypothesis and also the research questions. So in short, a well-conducted literature review strengthens the credibility of a research study and ensures it contributes meaningfully to academic knowledge. The next step in framing research objective is to define the scope. The scope of a research study refers to its boundaries, limitations, and focus. It specifies what aspects of the research problem will be covered and what will be excluded. Clearly defining the scope helps to ensure that the study remains manageable, relevant, and aligned with the research objectives. So another important step in research objective is to define the scope. Okay, so like that, our research must also have limitations and boundaries. So if that scope is framed, so within that limit only, the researcher should go for his research process, should work on his research process in order to manage his research work and also manage the available resources. So defining the scope will help the study to remain manageable, relevant, and aligned with the research objectives. So the researcher would be in a position to see whether the data collected or the information or the steps what he is undergoing in that research process is aiming at achieving his objectives. Coming to the importance of defining the scope, it ensures the research remains focused and relevant. It helps the researcher to be focused in his study and to collect only the relevant data. It helps in managing time, resources, and data collection. So defining the scope helps the researcher to manage the time, resources, and the data collection. It clarifies expectations for readers and stakeholders. Okay, so it also gives proper explanation for the readers and also the stakeholders concerned with the topic, or maybe the future researchers also. It prevents unnecessary deviations from the research objectives. Okay, so it helps the researcher to go in a right track and to collect the necessary data. So unnecessary deviations can be avoided, is prevented. A well-defined scope provides clarity and direction, making the research process more efficient and effective. The next step in research objectives is to formulate general and specific objectives. Actually, this general and specific objectives are the types of objectives. Again, we will be seeing later on. So in framing the research objectives, the researcher has to formulate or frame general and specific objectives. So research objectives provide a clear roadmap for a study, guiding data collection and analysis. They define what the researcher aims to achieve and ensure the study remains focused. Okay, so framing the general and specific objectives helps the researcher to go in a right track, to go in a right road. Okay, for collecting the data and making the analysis also. So general objective is the broad overarching goal of the research. It describes the main purpose of the study and reflects the core research problem. The next one, specific objectives. Specific objectives break down the general objective into smaller actionable goals. They focus on particular aspects of the research and helps to structure the study's methodology. So for general objectives, say for example, so while I was doing my research, I have taken retail marketing as my general objective. So it is a broad area. Okay. So from that, what I'm going to give as my problem or the objectives. Okay. So statement of problem, what I'm going to give is, I have taken the opportunities and challenges of both retail and organized and unorganized retailing. So that is specific objectives. So the broad area covered is the general objectives. And in that broad area, what we are going to take as objectives, take the study for, take the problem for our study, that is specific objectives. So importance of well-defined objectives, it helps in designing the research methodology. So the well-defined objectives helps the researcher to design the methodology to be used or implemented in his study. It ensures clarity and focus in data collection. Okay, so well-defined objectives, it enables the researcher to focus on data collection. Say, for example, as I already told, in my study, I have taken the opportunities and challenges of retail and, organized and unorganized retailing. So I have collected the data relating to the opportunities of retail marketing, challenges of retail marketing, organized retail and unorganized retail. Okay. So it provides a clear structure for analyzing the results. So the well-defined objectives helps the researcher to choose the methodology to be implemented in his research, the data to be collected, which will pay for analyzing the results. It enhances the study's relevance and applicability. So the defined objectives enhances the researcher to apply the methodology and the data collected in his study and the relevance. The next one is, the next step in framing research objective is ensures alignment with methodology. So aligning research with methodology is crucial to maintaining the credibility, validity, and reliability of the study. It ensures that the research design, data collection, and analysis methods effectively address the research problem and objectives. Okay, so that is the data collected by the researcher. It has to match with the, it has to pave way for achieving the objectives framed by the researcher. Okay, so the researcher has to ensure that the data collection is effective in achieving this research objectives. Importance of alignment with methodology. It ensures research validity and reliability. It supports research objectives. Okay, so the alignment with the methodology supports research objectives. the research validity and reliability also. It enhances data collection and analysis. It improves research feasibility, and also it increases the credibility of findings of the research. Well-aligned methodology ensures that conclusions are based on sound evidence. So if the researcher have implemented a proper methodology in his research work, so it gives a proof or the strong evidence for the data collection and analyzed by the researcher. So so already this we have seen, that is types of research objectives we have seen in the steps framing the research objectives also. So two main types, research objectives are categorized into two main types. One is general objectives and another one is specific objectives. General objectives is also known as broad objectives. These describe the overarching goals of the research. Specific objectives, these are more detailed and define the specific aspects of the research problem that need to be addressed. So example of framing research objectives. So consider a study on the impact of social media on student academic performance. The objectives should be framed as, if it is in the case of general objective, to examine the influence of social media usage on students' academic performance. So this is the broad area. So it is a general objective. So this broad area of objective can be split up into various specific objectives. To analyze the relationship between social media usage during and academic scores, social media usage duration and academic scores, to investigate the impact of different social media platforms on study habits, to assess students' perceptions of social media's role in learning. So these are the specific objectives which we derive from the general objectives. So coming to the next part of today's topic is framing of hypothesis.
Madam, sorry for interrupt you, madam.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Madam, screen is not visible.
Screen is not visible, huh? Yeah. Just a minute, sir. Now, is it okay, sir?
Yes, madam, okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Framing of hypothesis. So framing a hypothesis is a critical step in research that involves formulating a testable statement based on observations, existing knowledge, and theories. A hypothesis provides a direction for the study. It guides data collection, analysis, and interpretation. So as equivalent to setting of objectives, framing of objectives. So the framing of hypothesis is also a very crucial step in the research process. Okay. It provides a direction for the study and also for the collection of data, analysis, and interpretation. So actually, it helps in studying the relationship between the various variables. Definition of a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a proposed explanation or prediction about the relationship between two or more variables. It is a statement that can be tested through research and experimentation. So example is, increased screen time reduces sleep quality among teenagers. So we have to, the hypothesis studies about the relationship between the variables by using various tests and experimentations. Importance of hypothesis in research. First one, it guides research direction. A hypothesis provides a clear focus for the study, helping the researchers determine what they need to investigate. It defines the scope of the research and prevents unnecessary exploration. So the hypothesis provides, or it gives a clear focus for the researcher investigate or what he. It also defines the scope of the research for the researchers, the limit of the research work. The second one is establishes relationship between variables. A hypothesis suggests a cause and effect relationship between independent and dependent variables. It helps in testing theories interact. So another importance of a hypothesis is it establishes a relationship between the variables, cause and effect relationship between the between both dependent and independent variables. And it also helps in testing the theories, and it gives or it shows how the variables influence or interact with the study, influence the study. Then third one, facilitates data collection and analysis. Researchers design experiments and surveys based on the hypothesis. It provides a basis for statistical testing and interpretation of results. So it helps the hypothesis, framing of hypothesis helps the researchers to get the necessary data collection and analysis. So what type of research design they have to apply in their research work depends on the basis of the hypothesis framed. So it helps the researcher it provides the researcher a statistical testing and interpretation of results also. So statistical tools used gives the testing, and the interpretations of the results will facilitate the researcher to monitor his research work, whether he is going in a right direction, whether the objectives are achievable. The next importance of hypothesis is it enhances objectivity. A well-defined hypothesis ensures that research remains structured and unbiased. It prevents researchers from drawing random or subjective conclusions. So it enhances the objectivity. After testing the variables, after applying the research design methodology, the conclusions are arrived. So it prevents the researcher from drawing random conclusion. So only based on the test or the methods used, the interpretations, the analysis and the interpretations could be made. It supports scientific process. Hypotheses contribute to theories and models by either supporting or refuting existing knowledge. Testing hypothesis leads to new discoveries and advancements in various fields. Okay, so that is a hypothesis. It helps in contributing theories and models which can, which either supports the research work or may not be supporting the research work also. Okay. And the hypothesis testing leads to new discoveries in the research work, in the new discoveries and advancements in various fields. The next one encourages critical thinking. Formulating a hypothesis requires logical reasoning and problem-solving skills. It helps researchers critically analyze existing knowledge and develop new perspectives. So, framing of hypothesis encourages critical thinking, critical logical thinking and problem-solving skills among the researchers. It helps the researcher to develop new ideas in his research. Okay, so every research has to give a new discoveries and ideas and conclusions. Okay, so this hypothesis enables or helps the researchers to gain new knowledge and develop new perspectives. The next one, it helps in decision making. In fields like business, healthcare, and engineering, hypotheses assist in data-driven decision making. Companies use hypotheses to test market strategies and improve products. So hypothesis helps the researcher in arriving at a proper decision. So mostly in the fields like business, healthcare, and engineering. Okay, so in order to arrive at a right decision, they mainly rely on this hypothesis. Coming to the characteristics of hypothesis, the first characteristic feature is testable. A hypothesis must be verifiable through experiments, observations, or statistical analysis. It should allow researchers to confirm or refute it based on empirical evidences. So hypothesis it should be a testable one. Okay, so the hypothesis framed, we have to measure the validity, the quality of that hypothesis only by verifying through various experiments or observations or statistical analysis. So the hypothesis framed should be such a thing that it must be verifiable through this observations and analysis. Then second one, it should be clear and precise. A hypothesis should be concise and specific, avoiding vague or ambiguous terms. It must clearly state the relationship between the variables. So the hypothesis framed should be clear and specific. It should state the relationship between the variables clearly. There should not be any confusion over the relationship between the variables. The next one is logical and rational. It should be based on existing theories, knowledge, or observations. The hypothesis must be grounded in logical reasoning rather than mere assumptions. So the hypothesis must be tested. Okay, so based on various theories, observations, and experiments, the hypothesis framed should be a testable one. And it should not be just a just mere assumption. The next characteristic is predictive. A good hypothesis suggests possible outcomes or relationship that can be tested. It should indicate what is expected when certain conditions change. So it must be a predictive one. Okay, so prediction is what we are predicting to happen in the near future. So a good hypothesis should suggest possible outcomes that can be tested. The next characteristic of hypothesis is falsifiable. A hypothesis must be capable of being proven false if evidence contradicts it. If a hypothesis cannot be disproven, it is not scientifically valid. So it should not be actually falsifiable one. The hypothesis should be tested, even if it is positive or negative. It should be tested, and the evidence has to be provided for that testing. Relevant. The next characteristic is relevant to the problem. It should directly relate to the research question and contribute to solving the problem. Irrelevant or overly broad hypothesis may lead to inconclusive results. So the research question must be relevant. It should directly relate to the research question. The hypothesis framed should relate to the objectives or the research question. And it should contribute to solve the problem or achieving the objectives. The next one is simple and specific. A hypothesis should be simple yet comparison, focusing on one idea at a time. Complex hypothesis with too many variables may be difficult to test. So the hypothesis frame should be of simple one. Okay, so which helps the researcher to focus on the on each and every idea of his research. So it should not be a complex one, which may lead to confusion and difficulty for the researcher to test also. And the next one is statement form. It is usually written in declarative form, predicting a relationship between variables. So example, increased screen time leads to reduced sleep quality in teenagers. So usually the hypothesis should be written in a declarative form, which shows the relationship between the variables. Coming to the types of hypothesis. So we have null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, statistical hypothesis, and research hypothesis. So the first type of hypothesis is null hypothesis. It states that there is no relationship or no effect between the variables. It is tested statistically and either rejected or failed to be rejected. So in the case of null hypothesis, it shows or it states that there is no relationship between the variables. So example for null hypothesis is, there is no significant difference in test scores between students who study in the morning and those who study at night. Then the next type of hypothesis is alternate hypothesis. It suggests that there is a relationship between the variables and it opposes the null hypothesis. The example for alternate hypothesis is, students who study in the morning perform better than those who study at night. So this shows that there is a relationship between the variables. The next one, directional hypothesis. So it predicts the specific direction of the relationship between variables. So the example for directional hypothesis is, higher stress levels leads to lower productivity. Then the non-directional hypothesis, it suggests a relationship exists but does not specify the direction. So in non-directional hypothesis, there is a relationship between the variables but does not specify the direction. So example is, there is a relationship between stress levels and productivity. So we do not know whether the productivity is lower or higher. So it is not specific. The next one, types of under the types of hypothesis. The fifth one is statistical hypothesis. So this is usually expressed in mathematical or statistical terms for data analysis. So H0 is to mu1 is equal to mu2. The mean scores of two groups are equal. Then the last one is research hypothesis. It is a precise, testable statement predicting a specific outcome or relationship between variables in a study. So this research hypothesis, it gives a specific outcome or the relationship between the variables. So example is, students who receive structured tutoring sessions will score higher on standardized math tests than those who do not receive tutoring. So students who are going for the tuitions, they have scored high marks in maths test rather than those who don't go for tuitions, those who don't receive or do not receive tutoring. The next one is, we are going to see the steps in framing a hypothesis. So these are the steps involved in framing a hypothesis. Identify the problem, conduct literature review, define variables, formulate the hypothesis, test for feasibility, and refine the hypothesis. So the first step is to identify the research problem, to select a specific topic, choose a subject area that interests you and is researchable. Narrow down the focus. Okay, so define a specific problem or question within this topic that you aim to address. So first we have to choose the topic in which we are having the interest. Okay, so for this I would like to share my experience. That is, at the time of choosing my research topic, at the time Walmart. Okay, so that was a hot topic during that time, and moreover I'm from a retail marketing family, so I have taken retail market as my area of research. Okay, so like that we must have the interest in selecting the topic so that we can be able to focus our research in the topic also. The second one is conducting literature review. So this already we have seen in framing the objectives also. This is very, very important. Review existing literature, investigate current knowledge, theories, and findings related to your research problem, and identify the gaps. So look for areas where information is lacking or where further investigation is needed. Okay, so when we come across various reviews, we may be in a position to identify the research gap. Okay, if the conducting literature review helps the researcher to identify the research gap and the area where we have to do our research and give a new conclusion or new theories to the society. The next one is defining the variables. So independent variable, the factor you plan to manipulate or change, and the dependent variable, the factor you will measure or observe in response to change in the independent variable. The next step is formulating the hypothesis. To develop a clear statement, articulate a concise prediction about the relationship between the independent and dependent variables. Use an if-then structure. Frame your hypothesis in a way that specifies the expected outcome. For example, if independent variable, then can be used for expected effect on dependent variables. Then ensure testability. So design feasible experiments. So confirm that the hypothesis can be tested through empirical methods such as experiments, observations, data analysis, or even case studies. Then consider practical constraints. So assess the availability of resources, time, and ethical considerations. The next one in framing the hypothesis is to refine the hypothesis, clarify definitions. So to ensure all terms and variables are clearly defined and unambiguous, to specify the population, indicate the group or context to which the hypothesis applies, and predict the direction. State whether you expect a positive or negative or no relationship between the variables. So conclusion, framing research objectives is a fundamental step in the research process, ensuring clarity, direction, and feasibility. Well-structured objectives contribute to the study's effectiveness by guiding data collection, analysis, and interpretation. By following a systematic approach in framing objectives, researchers can enhance the quality and impact of their work, leading to meaningful and reliable conclusions. So framing the research objectives is a crucial step in the research, and it provides the way for collecting the data, analysis, and interpretation, and helps the researcher to move in a right direction to achieve his objectives. A well-framed hypothesis strengthens research by guiding data collection and analysis. It establishes a focus for the study, helping researchers design experiments and collect relevant data. A well-framed hypothesis is specific and measurable, making it possible to test and validate through experiments or observations. It helps researchers remain objective by defining clear expectations before data collection. A hypothesis allows for systematic data analysis and gives some meaningful conclusions. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the wonderful session. Dear participants, if you have any doubt, you can unmute your mic and ask.
Madam Devika Machi,
Yes,
ma'am.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank you, madam.
yes, sir.
Thank you for your wonderful session, madam.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shekhar sir, and your team for giving me an opportunity for the to be a part of this workshop. Thank you, and thanks to all the participants, and the best wishes for your endeavors and your research work. Thank you.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam.